Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back to the ANEW Insight Podcast. We're back for the second half of our interview with author, physician, and weight loss specialist, Dr. Adrienne Youdim. Dr. Adrienne gave us really amazing and invaluable insight into her inspiration to treat weight loss and the ways that she goes about treating weight loss. We also discussed her book. So if you missed the first half, you got to go back because she is incredible. Dr. Adrienne, welcome back.
Thanks, Supatra. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. So we are talking about weight loss medications and doing a big, deep dive. And we know that they have been really life-changing for many, medically necessary for many, but they're not without drawbacks. We started to get into that and what we're seeing in terms of a rise of eating disorders or disordered eating. What are some of the most important pros and cons you believe patients and even other doctors need to be aware of with these medications?
Well, I'm going to start with saying that as we have the American Medical Association, I think it was back in 2006, qualified obesity as a disease. And I think this generates a lot of emotion, but I think it was an important designation. The reason being that essentially a disease indicates or means that something in our bodies has gone awry, right? Like some kind of physiology, normal physiology has gone awry. And what we know is that when people gain weight, for whatever reason, and they try to lose weight, that their body shifts their hormones, their metabolism, fat enzymes. There are multiple physiologic mechanisms that shift to preserve that higher weight. And so in order to lose weight and successfully maintain at a lower weight becomes physiologically difficult. We tend to look at this as like a lack of willpower or a character flaw, but there is a physiology or a pathophysiology that happens when people gain excess weight. And I think that's important. And that's what the designation of obesity allows us to recognize. So that being said, knowing that preserving that new weight is so complex and is managed by so many different hormones and systems and pathways, it's wonderful to have a medication that actually helps manage people's appetite and hunger so that they can lose weight. And so what GLP-1 drugs are basically mimics of this hormone called GLP-1 that we all naturally release when we consume food. This is a hormone that tells our brain, hey, we got food down here. You can shut off that hunger valve. So it dampens hunger and appetite. It also slows down the gut so that the food can hang out there longer. Again, potentiating, amplifying this feeling of fullness. And then it does a bunch of other things like help the body release insulin. And now we're seeing that it helps remodel the heart and perhaps protect the brain and all this other stuff that we definitely don't have time to get into. For that reason, I value this drug. On the other hand, there are side effects. Now, the side effects and adverse effects, which are different than side effects in my mind. Now, the side effects that really we kind of perseverated on, people vomit, people throw up. By and large, these can be mitigated through diet. I've been prescribing these drugs for years. I've prescribed them thousands of times to thousands of people. I can count literally, Supatra, on one hand the number of patients that I've had to say, I'm so sorry, your body just can't tolerate this drug because of excessive vomiting or diarrhea or gut issues. But that's like what we always hear about, right? The reason we hear about it, I think, is because people aren't being counseled on proper nutrition. GLP-1s are drugs that kind of I always tell my patients, it's like the kind of food that is not gonna make you feel good or wouldn't have made you feel good otherwise, like that Mexican dinner with, like, the yummy fried chips, right? If you eat that on a GLP-1, the GLP-1 is gonna smack you on the hand. You're just gonna feel more shitty, if I can say that, than you would have otherwise. That's what GLP-1 does. So, that's not what I really focus on because it's not a problem for most of my patients. What I do worry about, though, is what happens whenever people lose weight effectively, be it GLP-1 drugs, be it bariatric surgery, and that is that we can't the body does not pick and choose the muscle myocyte or muscle cell from the fat cell. What people don't recognize is that you can lose weight on the scale, and yet your body fat can go up. So, like, I don't like to use the word fat, but you're fatter even though on the scale, the numbers are lower. And the reason why this is important is because studies that show that people who have higher body fat, well, first of all, losing muscle affects your metabolism, affects your body composition, right? Makes it harder to maintain the weight. So there's all of that. But if we zoom out beyond weight and think about health, poor body composition is associated with metabolic disease, metabolic syndrome, higher levels of falls and fractures. So there's a lot that goes into nutrition that is separate from weight. And unfortunately, when people are losing weight, they're so thrilled again to lose the weight. Or it's happening so seamlessly that they kick the can down the curb. Oh, I'll worry about nutrition next week. Right now, I'm just living my best life. But the problem is that it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And I try and say this lovingly to my patients, and some heed my warning and some don't. And it becomes a challenge.
That is a difficult road to manage. And also, I think because most people are told, I think that this is true, that they need to be on this medication for life, they tend to then just rely on the medication alone and don't pay attention to nutrition. And what we're seeing right now, and I think we have a new administration coming in that is less inclined to have this be a part of insurance inclusion. How are we going to navigate all of the people who are on this right now who may lose their access to the medication and not be able to be on it for life and who have not made those nutritional changes? And I like to just point out too, before you answer that, that I think a lot of people are unaware that the hormone's actually made in the body. It's made when we eat starches. It's made when we eat in the morning. It's made when we exercise. There's so many ways that it's made naturally, but I think we're worrying, especially from what I'm seeing on these Facebook groups, just dependence on these without that long-term plan. How do you guide patients through that?
Yeah, this is difficult because we're caught between like the right thing to do and what policy may force us to do or access to care may force us to do. You know, the reason why we say these are long-term drugs, that people need to be on these drugs long-term, is not to disempower people from making the changes on their own. It's actually, I think, kind and empowering because it's recognizing that there's physiologic changes that occur that are going to drive weight regain. And someone can be doing their darndest to eat right and to exercise. And when their brain is being bombarded by hunger signals, when their metabolism has dropped as a result of the weight loss, um, they're going to be hard pressed to manage that weight maintenance. And so I think about weight loss drugs the way I think about antihypertensives. I don't expect someone to will their blood pressure down if I take off their blood pressure medication. And I don't expect a person to will their hunger hormones away after they've lost weight. And I think that actually is a bias to, to not expect a diabetic to manage their blood sugar without medications per se, but to expect a person with obesity to manage their hunger hormones without medication. That is the reason why these are long-term drugs. But then, of course, people may be faced with this difficult situation where they lose access to care. And I also don't want to evoke a doomsday scenario for them. But I will say that I think the way in which they've lost their weight to begin with could have an impact, right? Because number one, like we've already mentioned, to some degree, changes in body composition are dependent on whether you exercise and whether you ate the right foods while you were losing weight. And on top of that, eating those nourishing foods, right, potentiates your own body's GLP-1, like you said, right? So so eating high protein, eating high fiber, all of these things help our body's own GLP-1. Now, I don't want to pretend like it's going to be a surge of GLP-1 like an injection from semaglutide, right? Because again, I feel like that is not being honest and true. And then if somebody eats a broccoli and doesn't feel the same thing as 2.5 of Wegovy, they're going to blame themselves. It is not the same thing. But we can potentiate our body's own innate satiety by eating right. And then this is also a place where we can switch to talking about the hunger, right? What is our hunger in that moment? If you're sitting at your desk and you're just like flustered, right? And you need a break from the laptop or from the Zoom meetings, but you don't acknowledge that and you're working from home, it's much more likely that we're going to go to the pantry and grab something. And we all did this during COVID, right? If we recognize that we're in bed at night and we're watching Netflix, when we really need to shut it down and go to bed, that makes your hunger hormones go up, those same hormones that we're talking about that make you feel hungry. And so the hunger is for sleep. Turn off the TV and go to bed. Or maybe you're watching TV and your husband next to you or your partner next to you is asleep, and it dawns on you that you're like two ships passing in the night and you haven't had a decent conversation with your partner in weeks. Maybe that hunger is for connection. Um, and so we can use the drug actually to dial back that food noise and then do the meaningful work of recognizing what the true hunger is. What are you truly
Yes.
hungry for?
Yes. So you are really giving a picture of how you integrate holistic care into medicalized weight loss. And I think that's a big part of the conversation that I feel like is missing in so many ways, especially for people who might be trying to get these medications from compounding pharmacies, getting them online. I see so much confusion from people even trying to fill their syringe. How far do I fill this up? And they're taking pictures of it and asking people how to do this. So give us a picture, just a little bit more detail of, and this is where I think it's so important that we really conceptualize the whole picture when it comes to weight loss. You are absolutely right that there are a myriad of different reasons why people might go to the pantry, and it may have zero to do with actual physiological hunger. That's what I help people reconnect to and really understand. I also think that we have so much misinformation out there in terms of what it takes to naturally lose weight. We see a lot of lies in diet culture right now, an overconsumption of protein, making carbs the enemy. And when we actually know that carbs and fiber are essential for our functioning, we thrive off of carbs. So, how do people navigate through all of the noise to get to the more holistic side of managing their weight and understanding their weight gain or weight loss with medication.
You're right. There is a lot of misinformation. There is a lot of, or there are a lot of self-proclaimed gurus out there who read a book and then hop on social media and say they're an expert of X, Y, and Z. And look, there's a lot of us who have been educated who still disagree because it isn't one size fits all, because there are many different ways to approach this. And people's preferences also matter. Maybe somebody lives in a carb-centric household. Maybe somebody's vegan. Maybe somebody really does love meat and potatoes. And so there's a lot of aspects here. There's a lot of things that are at play, and one size does not fit all. And we do have to be nuanced about all of this. Um, what I feel like saying in this moment is, to a certain degree, be your own guru. Like you and I make our living, so to speak, or it's our life's passion, I believe, to do this work for people. So come to me. I'd love for you to come to me. But at the same time, I think we inherently know when we're being sold a bill of nonsense, right? Like something inside of us is like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, is it possible that I eat this plastic capsule and it's really going to give me GLP-1? That doesn't make sense, right? Or if I only eat protein for 3 days, or I only eat cabbage for 3 days, or if I stand on my head and eat protein and cabbage for 3 days. I mean, I'm being facetious, but some of the stuff out there is so absurd and outrageous. And yet, I remember Supatra, like maybe 10 years ago, I got asked to go speak on Dr. Phil against this woman who was telling people to eat fermented sauerkraut and salt, and telling people it would like solve all the cures of their lives. On one hand, I have compassion for the people because I recognize that sometimes we're so in need of guidance and help that we're just like, we accept everything. On the other hand, I want to empower people to follow your own gut, follow your own intuition. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? What do I really need right now? That's a powerful question.
Oh, I encourage my clients to do that all of the time. I think that our body contains the most innate wisdom that will help to guide us however and wherever we need to go. And if we can just silence ourselves for a second, breathe, get into our parasympathetic nervous system, get into a mindful state, you will hear the answer. And I just think it does come down to simply asking the question. But I also think that our society, our culture moves really fast, and people are really interested in the fast result. So, how do you help patients stay engaged in this kind of inner work, especially when these medications can create this false sense of arrival?
Well, people select. I'm very transparent about my approach, and the people who come to me are hungry for that approach. They're looking for not just numbers on the scale, but maybe a life change, a change in their relationship with themselves, or they don't know what they're looking for, but they're curious and willing to explore. There are plenty of ways to access these medications online, even the FDA approved ones, not just compounded ones. You can go on the website and you can talk to a teledoc and you can get the drug. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people don't want to engage and they just want the medication, and that's fine. But the people who engage with me are really looking to understand how they got here. They want not just to look thinner, but also to have a different relationship with themselves. I always say nutrition is not just about the food that you eat, it's the company that you keep, it's the words that you use towards yourself, it's whether or not you engage in movement and rest and play and contemplative practices. And all of us, whether we are experts in this area or not, we have seasons. We have times in our lives when we're like on it, and we have times in our lives where we're really challenged by what, frankly, is just the human condition. And so while I love to help people lose weight because it's healthier and because it gives them self-esteem and for all the reasons, what I really am interested in is helping people live a life that is filled with vitality. Like we were not put on this earth. Whether you believe in God or just your parents who birthed you, they didn't go through all of that work, right? For us to live dull lives.
Mhm,
They're not
absolutely.
vibrant and filled with vitality. And as a mother, I think about that. I want my children to be safe and sane, and I want them to, like, milk this life for what it is, and it takes nourishing ourselves, mind, body, and soul in order to be able to do that.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. And I do think that health is a journey of self introspection, of awareness, of really examining our lives and asking ourselves what we want and how we can go about getting what we want. But I wanted to touch back on something that I think we didn't get into as much as I'd like to. What advice do you have for people, say, who do have their insurance stop providing them access to GLP-1s? And we're seeing a lot of the compounding pharmacies shut down. How can we help people navigate if they cannot get these medications any longer?
So, there are other medications for weight loss. They are not as effective or historically haven't been as fast and effective. Um, so but maybe we don't need that. Maybe once you've used a GLP-1 and you're trying to maintain, maybe you just need something else would help, right? And I want to stay clear from like offering medical advice in general, but it's worth having a conversation with a physician who is maybe an obesity medicine specialist who knows what the other options are. There may be ways of scaling the use of the drug. It's weekly, but perhaps for you, every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks would be just what you need in conjunction with lifestyle therapy to maintain the weight loss. There are pharmacies online that are offering, I'm not gonna say cheaper, it's still expensive, but, cheaper than what would be at your local pharmacy. So maybe that's an option. Talk to somebody who knows this space and troubleshoot. I don't think look, I'm not happy about it, but I also don't feel doomsday about it either. I think there are ways to navigate this situation.
I agree with you. And for those of you who haven't seen, I've done a few just shorter videos about how our bodies make GLP-1 naturally. And I think really if we can arm people with knowledge, have them seek out education about what types of foods nourish us the best, but also help us with natural weight loss and help us produce these hormones. If people can understand that their circadian rhythms are so important. You were talking about that earlier. When
Sure.
you go to bed, when you wake up, when you get sunlight, all of these things are natural ways that we can help support our own body's natural weight loss mechanisms. I think is going to be a really valuable conversation because I think, and I don't want to be doomsday about it either. I think that we have to be mindful that we may see these changes in insurance coverage. We may see a lot of compounding pharmacies go out of business, and that will leave a lot of people kind of just out there questioning. And so if you can go to Dr. Adrienne, if you want to come to me and ask me any question, I am happy to help you navigate through that if you are unable to get these medications. But even if you're on these medications, I think it is so important that you continue to give yourself the education you need, especially if you don't want to or can't be on a medication like this forever. And I think people really need to understand that this is a medication. This isn't, even if you can get this online, this is something that needs to be medically supervised.
Not a vitamin.
Yeah, it's not a vitamin. You are actually giving yourself an actual shot. There will be a pill coming out soon, but still, you need to be under the guidance of not just your physician, but it would be really helpful to have a dietitian, maybe even a therapist that you can talk to about the emotional reasons that you eat. Weight gain, weight loss is a very complex issue that I think needs a multidisciplinary team. And Dr. Adrienne, I'm just so happy you're out there advocating for that, that you are really mindful about your prescribing, that you are helping your patients on a holistic level navigate through the use of these medications. We need more people like you. And so I'm so glad to know you. Please tell everybody how they might be able to find you, how they can work with you, how can they find your book?
Thank you. Thanks for your kind words, for inviting me on the podcast. I appreciate all of it. All of my things are on my website, dradrienneyoudim.com. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn, Dr. Adrienne Youdim. But you can find the website. On the website, you can find the book, the podcast called Health Bite. I have courses on there and just a newsletter that covers my weekly musings around these issues that really talk about weight, often without talking about weight, talking about how we can nourish ourselves more deeply, more wholly. And I think regardless of the number on the scale, that's something that we could all use a little bit more of.
Oh my gosh, I can agree with you more. Everyone, please go out, read Dr. Adrienne's book, subscribe to her newsletter. I get it. I love it. I was on her podcast, luckily enough, and she has amazing guests on there as well. You are a powerhouse. You are
Thank
out there doing some amazing work. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I know we're going to stay in touch, and maybe I can have you back on at some point to talk about this topic a little bit more.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
And thank you everyone for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. I'm really looking forward to our next interview and hope to see you soon. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Insight Podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.